The prefix proto derives from the Greek word for first or earliest. In this session, we're going to take a look at buildings that represented the embryonic or earliest stages of the tall building. The lighthouse of Alexandria, Egypt, on the island of Pharos, is estimated to have been about 330 feet high or 27 stories. We don't know what it really looked like, and this image by 19th century artist Ferdinand Knob imagines it as a 10-tiered circular plan. Also about 330 feet high are both the bell tower in Venice and the clock tower of the Daniels and Fisher department store in Denver. Both have piers terminating in semicircular arches, topped by a loggia or open arcade, then a smaller cube supporting the pyramidal or pyramid-shaped roof. Take a look at both to see how the department store adapted the Venetian bell tower. How do they differ? The idea of the frame, rather than a monolithic, load-bearing wall, is key to the idea of the skyscraper. Early important examples of advances in the structural frame are the wood balloon frame, usually employed in houses, and the iron frame, used to great effect in the Eiffel Tower. The balloon frame revolutionized and expedited house construction since its lightweight 2 by 4 inch timbers, running continuously from the ground to the base of the roof and assembled on the ground with inexpensive machine-made nails, could be tilted up for quick completion. Both of these buildings show the almost manic enthusiasm for all things Greek in the 1840s. With their rows of columns supporting a triangular pediment, they replicate aspects of ancient Greek temples, in this case probably looking back to the Parthenon in Athens. But the school in Philadelphia departs from the model of the Parthenon slightly in its use of a different order or type of column. There are three fundamental types of classical columns. The Doric has no base and a capital, or upper terminus, consisting of a saucer. The Ionic features 2 scrolls for its capital, and the Corinthian has outward turning leaves of the acanthus plant. Which 2 of these do Federal Hall and Girard College use? Here, the 2 buildings are described with drawings known as sections, because they ask you to imagine slicing through the building from top to bottom. The sections show a contradiction. We see domes inside both buildings, hidden away from exterior view. The Greeks did not use domes, and the internal structure of these 2 American buildings goes way beyond anything the Greeks intended. The Jane building was advanced because at its front it used a skeletized granite frame, opening up the wall to more windows. The stone piers end in ogee arches, the double S-curved form illustrated in the lower right, and derived from the group of 4 windows at the center of the Venetian palace's facade along the Grand Canal. These 2 buildings represent cast iron construction, which we reviewed in detail in class. As metal-framed buildings, they anticipate the steel frames of fully realized skyscraper construction. The Harper Brothers building is described again with a section drawing, and that drawing shows us the hollow floor tile arches made from a ceramic material known as terra cotta, in between the iron joists, the horizontal beams, as illustrated in the lower right. But the design of the cast iron exterior of the Howitt building was far more than a technological development. It absorbed another historical style, that of the High Renaissance in Italy. we can see that the library's sculptural marble surface, with its projecting cornice at the top and tiers of columns separating arched windows, supported by smaller columns within, is borrowed adeptly and translated into cast iron. Can you see whether the column orders in the two buildings are the same? The Iron and Glass Crystal Palace, built for the Great Exhibition, opened in the same decade as the Wanamaker store in New York, the structure of which also relied on iron. This view was photographed after a catastrophic fire ravaged the building, uncovering deep, horizontal wrought iron units called girders that in turn supported smaller wrought iron beams, in between which timber joists for supporting the floorboards ran. The columns supporting each level were cast iron. The Equitable Building, 130 feet high, had a brick and granite enclosure with an interior frame of economical wrought iron beams, masonry, that is brick, partitions between offices, and hollow terracotta floor arches. The Kendall Building was the first fully fireproof building in Chicago. Both reflect the mansard style popular in the 1870s, so named because the French architect Mansart devised the steeply sloping attic roof that allowed for almost a full story underneath. The Proto-Exchange building's design is part of an important prototype that employs a distinct rhythm of elements, in which stories are grouped beneath arches, and the upper row of arches doubles the rhythm of the one below it, so that there are twice as many arches in the upper stories than in the lower four. The same principle was applied even earlier in Bristol, England, in which the ground story arches are twice as wide, resulting also in a doubling of the rhythm of the upper stories. This section drawing of the Produce Exchange building illustrated the upper level open-air atrium at the center, in addition to the wider spans of the ground level trading floor, made possible by the triangular braces or trusses in the arches. Like the Produce Exchange building, Richardson's Marshallfield wholesale store and the existing department store on the right, now Macy's, exhibit stories grouped beneath arches and rhythmic multiplication of the tiers of arches. Finally, the floor plans of the buildings show how different their spatial schemes are. The wholesale store still uses thick masonry walls on its interior, in addition to the cast iron columns, while the department store uses steel columns exclusively on the interior. The earlier store had a loading dock cut into the volume, while the later store has a dramatic glass-roofed atrium.